program, as well as the Summit County COVID-19 Arts and Culture Relief Grant Program. First off, I would be remiss if I didn't say a special thank you to County Executive Eileen Shapiro and her entire team for making this opportunity available to us in Summit County. We are very grateful for their leadership and their thoughtfulness in presenting these grant dollars that we can pass on to nonprofit organizations. A special thanks also to County Council for agreeing and voting an approval rating for this grant opportunity, and to the Grant Advisory Committee, who will give final recommendations to us before grants are awarded. So we're going to go through a quick PowerPoint presentation. We want to make sure you have the most accurate information. And then if you have any questions, we ask you to please type those in the chat box. And then our staff here at ACF will present those questions, and I'll try to answer them to the best of my ability. So let's get started. So again, we are here to talk about two programs. One is as I mentioned, the COVID-19 Nonprofit Relief Grant Program, and then the COVID-19 Arts and Culture Grant Program. So my first suggestion would be, please make sure that you apply to the right program. If you're an arts and culture organization, that's the one that you need to apply to. So we've had a couple issues with people applying in the wrong program, so we want to make sure that you get into the right one. Next. Again, these funds are made available to us through Summit County through the Section 5001 Federal Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security Act, or the CARES Act. This is a federal stimulus package, and then grants will be awarded from Akron Community Foundation. So although we get the money from the county, who got the money from the federal government, they in turn gave the money to us to then pass on to our nonprofit organizations. So we want to make sure that you are aware of that. Who is eligible for funding? So you must be a 501c3 organization in good standing with the Ohio Secretary of State and the IRS in order for you to be eligible. You cannot be a new organization. So you have to have had your 501c3 determination before March 1st, 2019. So newer organizations are not eligible for this program. Your principal place of operation or headquarters for your nonprofit must be here in Summit County. Because these are Summit County Relief Care dollars, the organization must benefit Summit County organizations or must benefit Summit County residents. The exception of that is that if you're an organization that's outside of Summit County, but you do services here in our community, you must have an Akron or Summit County address in order to be eligible. And we're also asking for at least 50% of your employees to be Summit County residents. Now, I can tell you that over the last couple of days, we've fielded some questions from organizations who may not meet that 50% of employee guideline. But you also keep into consideration your boards of directors. If they're predominantly Summit County, that will score favorably on your behalf. So you don't have to have at least 50% of the employees, but as long as you have board representation and the majority of the clients you serve, that will be important. The organization must be providing services in Summit County to be considered, and your organization must not be permanently closed, and you must intend to continue your operations following the COVID-19 pandemic. Those are essential to you getting a grant for this program. The nonprofit must not be in receivership or bankruptcy. And then you also must be current on all of your Summit County taxes, municipal taxes, joint development district taxes, any property taxes. We will be verifying that information. So there's a question on the application that you will be asked if you're current on all your taxes, but know that we then will double check that to make sure that that is all accurate. So that is who is eligible for the program. Who is not eligible for the program, and unfortunately this is a determination that came to us from the county. Public, private, and charter schools are not eligible. Colleges and universities, hospitals, any other funders, so any other foundations or any other grant-making entities in town, Any type of religious organizations, and unless you have a nonprofit within your religious organization. So for example, if you have a food bank within your church or place of worship that has its own separate 501c3 organization number, then you would be eligible for apply. You are not eligible if you're a for-profit or small business entity, but I can tell you that our partners at the Greater Akron Chamber have their small business grant program that's open for, I believe, another 2 days, today and tomorrow. So if you are a small business looking for a grant, you can go to the Greater Akron Chamber and apply for one of their small business entity grants that is also made available through the County of Summit through their grant relief program. And then finally, any government or public service entity is also not eligible for this program. And again, there are going to be some organizations that are not eligible as well. And as we go through today's PowerPoint, you will find out whether your organization applies or not. So next slide. The criteria for the nonprofit grant applications. And again, this is a directive that came down from the County of Summit when we agreed to do this program for that these must be COVID-related issues. So increased demand or decreased support as a result of COVID. You must have a clear vision on how these funds are going to be used, and up to 50% of that can be used for general operating, and the other 50% of grant funds can be used to provide direct service to clients. Lost revenue because of events or fundraisers that were canceled are not eligible to be replaced. So this isn't a program for lost revenue. It's for lost expenses that you've incurred over the last 8 months or so. The good part about this is that any grants that is awarded must be spent by the time by the end of the year. So December 30th is the ending point. But the good thing is that you can go back to March 1st, 2020 of any incurred expenses that you've had and claim those on the report form when you submit your report. And then the area that's critical for nonprofits to understand is that you must be providing a basic service or important need into the community. And this is identified again by the county and the grants committee as food, clothing, and shelter, health, mental health, safety, safe care, and then safety net services. And then workforce development is also included in there as well. So if you're working with individuals to get them back into the workforce work system, then you would be eligible. So this isn't for every nonprofit in Summit County. You have to be providing a basic needs service to our community. And then the Arts and Culture Grant Program pretty much is the same criteria, but you must be an identified arts and culture organization and have an articulated mission that is dedicated to arts and culture here in our community. So Summit County was very generous to make sure that the arts and culture sector was covered in this program. But again, you may need to make sure that you are providing arts and culture services here in our community. And special thanks to our partner at Arts Now and to Nicole Mullet for getting this message out to the arts and culture community. We look forward to reading over your applications and giving back to the community in this way. Next slide. The timeline opened yesterday at 12:01 a.m. and believe it or not, there was somebody who submitted immediately. It's not a contest of who gets in first. All applications who get in before the deadline will be considered. So please make sure you get that application into us no later than next Friday, October 16th at 11:59 p.m. No late submissions will be accepted, and you have to begin the process to be considered. And you have to hit that submit button before 11:59 on October 16th. No late submissions will be considered. And then our hope is that our staff and our team here at Akron Community Foundation will spend the next 2 to 3 weeks after the deadline reviewing the applications, scoring them based on the scoring rubrics that we've identified. And then our hope is to present those to the Grants Advisory Committee in early November, with the final hopes of getting grants announced by the week of November 16th. That is our time frame. We are under a tight time frame in order to get these dollars out before the end of the year. But again, keep in mind when you're submitting your grant application, Request what you need. Again, you're going to be asked to submit paperwork and documentation on exactly how these dollars were spent. So for instance, if you're an organization that has an annual budget, let's say of $25,000 or $30,000, the likelihood of you getting a $50,000 grant is very unlikely. So ask for what you need. Go back and look at your expenses that you've had that are salary related, that are rent, mortgage, utility related. Those are the types of things that you could submit for this grant process when you look back at it. Next slide. Where to go to apply. You can go to our ACF website and look for the grants of the Summit County Cares grant page, or you can click on these two profiles. It's very lengthy to write that down. But again, if you go to our akroncf.org website, you will see the Summit County Cares program, and then you could go ahead and click on those, and there'll be connections within the website that allows you to go ahead and apply. If you're a brand new organization to Akron Community Foundation and you've never applied for a grant from us before, you need to first go in and create a profile in our grants portal, and that's pretty self-explanatory. It'll walk you through the process. Once that grant is, once that profile is created, then you'll be able to go on and apply for either one of these two opportunities. If you have questions and comments that are not going to be covered here today, we ask you to please go to caresinfo@akroncf.org, and we'll do our best to respond as soon as possible. We have staff that are dedicated here at the foundation who are working on this, including Brian Wrights, who is our Agency Endowment and Engagement Officer, Dawn Moglin, who we brought in as a project coordinator for this process, and additional staff here, including Chris Miller, Christina Gonzalez-Alcala, Karen Herdlicka, and myself, who are all available to answer your questions. But we ask you, as you can imagine, there are many nonprofits in our community who have a lot of questions. If you send us an email, we'll respond as quickly as possible. We have people monitoring that at all time. Because we are administering the grants, we ask you not to reach out to the county with your questions, because they're just going to kind of recommend you call us here at the foundation to get your questions answered. We have put together a few sample FAQs that are on our website. I'll go over a couple of them. What is the average size grant? How much should you apply for? So we'll be awarding grants up to $50,000. So suggested grant levels would be $2,500 is the lowest, $5,000, $10,000, $20,000, $30,000, $40,000, or $50,000. But as I said earlier, please make sure that you're able to justify what those expenses are going to be used for your grant process. Another example would be if you had intentions, let's say, of hiring an additional staff person, or you wanted to hire your first executive director, you can't go back to March 1st and pay that person if that person wasn't on board to begin with. So if you have specific questions about that, please just email us and we'll be able to answer those better for you. Can I apply to both funds? The answer is no. An organization can only receive one grant per organization. If you are applying for various programs, I would suggest you do that in one application. On the nonprofit grant application, there are specific checkboxes to let us know if you're applying for food, for shelter, for utilities, for safety services, anything like that. So check all that apply, but you can only submit one request. And the only exception of that is that if you are not a nonprofit organization and you're using a fiscal sponsor, that fiscal sponsor can apply on your behalf, which gives them the responsibility of applying, of submitting the documentation, of controlling all the finances as it relates to this grant. But they can also apply for one for themselves if it's a separate request. This is an important one. If your organization already receives federal funds, and if you receiving this grant puts you over that $750,000 threshold, you would be subject to a single audit. And that's not something that we determine, that's something that the federal government decides. and you will be responsible for paying for that audit if it puts you over that threshold. So keep that in mind when you're applying for this grant, that if it puts you over the threshold, you may want to consider whether this grant is worthwhile for you, if it's worth the benefit of going through it, if you have to pay for that audit, which could be costly, is what I am told. So keep that in mind. And there is the email, caresinfo@akroncf.org. If you have any questions, we're going to open it up to questions right now. Type them into the chat box, and we're going to have our staff kind of read those questions. Or you can send it to caresinfo@akroncf.org, and we're happy to answer those questions for you. So at this point, do we have any questions yet? I can tell you, as the staff are looking at those, as you can imagine, there are many nonprofits in our community who can benefit from this program. We want to make sure that we get these dollars out as quickly and as expeditiously as possible. So if you know of organizations that qualify, please make sure you pass it on to them. We envision that this money is going to go rather quickly. And again, our staff and our team here has developed a scoring rubric that we're going to be using based on the application questions. And thanks to the folks at the chamber, that we were able to kind of gear our nonprofit rubrics similar to what they did for for-profit businesses. We realize that there's a little bit of difference in not-for-profits. So some of those things will be taken into consideration. But this will all be done on a scoring rubrics based on how you answer your questions, and depending on who surfaces to the top, all the way down to who really doesn't qualify.
All right, John, so somebody is asking if you could talk a little bit more about the lost revenue or loss of support requirements.
Sure. So again, the grant is not intended for lost funds, but you could use up to 50% of your grant for general operating purposes. The other 50% needs to be used to provide direct services to your clients. So if you have continued operations from March to today, you can go back and look at the expenses that you had that resulted in 1, 50% general operating, and 2, 50% for the direct programming that you're providing to your clients, as long as you're meeting that basic need threshold. So again, it has to be meeting a basic need necessity here in our community.
All right. Do 50% of all organization employees need to be Summit County residents, or 50% of our Akron office staff?
The question that's asked is, first of all, to tell us how many staff you had as of March 1st. Then we'll ask you to give us how many staff you have as of your application date. And then we're going to ask you how many of those staff that are here as of application date are Summit County residents. If it doesn't meet the 50%, it doesn't exclude you from getting a grant. It just means you won't score as high or as some other individuals who may have more than 50% of their grant, of their employees who are Summit County residents. And again, if you're a smaller organization, say if you only have 2 employees and one of them lives, or let's say both of them live in another community, it doesn't mean that you're automatically excluded. You could tell us about your board. Say that your board is made up of at least 50% individuals in Summit County, and we'll use that, take that into consideration when we use our scoring rubrics to award points for your organization. Another important thing I want to bring up is we have listed the grant agreement on our website. Please make sure you review that. The number one question on the application is going to be, did you read the grant agreement that you must sign? And again, this was something that Summit County government put together, that you are required to sign based on these being federal dollars. So please make sure you read that and make sure you understand that before you go about applying for this grant.
If the organization has already received a COVID-19 pandemic grant from ACF, do they qualify to apply for this funding?
Yes, they do. And in the grant application, we will ask you, 1, if you've received any other type of CARES Act money from the federal government or from Summit County. Doesn't exclude you from getting a grant. We just want to know that information. And then we also ask you what kind of local funds have you received, either from, say, us here at the foundation or our friends at the United Way, who have also been giving out grant dollars to organizations as a result of COVID through their relief fund. It doesn't take you out of the running. We just want to know that information just for our purposes.
Can you speak more to the safe care or safety net services, specifically before and after school programs, educational programs, and community or development programs?
Yeah, so this whole area was kind of the catch-all of what the county wanted to cover, and we had a difficult time coming up with an actual title for it, but Safe Care / Safety Net Services are really programs that are keeping our children, our elders, our seniors, or special needs populations safe either at home or within a community setting. So again, this does include daycare centers that are not-for-profit daycare centers. If you are a for-profit daycare center, you are not eligible for this opportunity. We're looking at funding before and after school programs, homeless shelters, mentoring programs, community and neighborhood development programs that are providing basic needs services to the people in their community. Social service programs to refugees and immigrants are eligible. And then finally, educational programs that enhances one's ability to be employed or to work so that they go back to work and care for their children and their families. So it's kind of a catch-all. But again, if you have specific programs, whether your program is eligible or not, please make sure you email us and we'll be better able to answer you directly.
A little bit more clarity on what the decrease of support means for an arts and culture organization. Could it mean attendance or less earned income due to closure and caps on attendance?
Yes, that's exactly what it means. So if your program usually gets funding in some capacity, say from another entity, and as a result of COVID, you have not been able to bring in programmatic dollars as a result of not serving as many clients, that would be an example of being able to recruit your programming costs for those programs.
May a food pantry use funds to pay for food through December 31st, or is it just for food purchased from March 1st until now?
It could be used for past purchases and any purchases between now and December. And we're using December 30th as the kind of cutoff date to make sure you use your funds before then. And then you will have, once the grant is awarded, you'll have up to 90 days after the grant has been expended. So 90 days really from December 30th to submit to us your documentation of what you have spent the money on. So it's not that it all has to be turned in before the end of the year. You'll have probably through the middle of March in order to be able to submit that documentation. And again, if you can't provide that documentation, if you can't provide the proper documents that are required based on the grant agreement, we don't want to put you in this tough situation to be able to pay those funds back. So we want to make sure that you understand that you're going to have to submit that documentation in order to get the grants.
All right. Can it cover unemployment costs?
That's a good question that we're still getting the answer to. If you send us an email, whoever asked that question, send us an email and we'll be able to get that. We've had that come through and I did submit the question to a couple people and I haven't heard back yet. But if you submit it to us and let us know who you are, then we'll be able to give you that answer.
Since the arts organizations are not providing the identified basic needs, what are the specific requirements eligible arts organizations need to do?
Yeah, theirs is a lot easier, to be honest. They don't have that basic needs requirement. You just must be considered an arts and culture organization and have that articulated mission that is arts and culture oriented. And again, we're defining arts and culture as defined as creating, preserving, and or exhibiting visual, multidisciplinary, literary, and performing arts, public art, history, and humanities, or becomes considered to be a cultural asset unique to Summit County community. Individual artists, unfortunately, are not eligible for this program, But again, they could be eligible through the Chamber's program for small businesses and sole proprietors.
All right, perhaps touch a little bit more again on some examples of what the grant may be used for. Some are asking if it includes 100% as under operating expenses, or things like an air purification system that might qualify as PPE. Can you just share more about a few examples?
Yeah, so again, the eligible expenses would be for rent payments, for mortgage payments, utility payments for your primary place of business for your nonprofit, health, property, and casualty insurance could be covered, as well as salary and wages for all employees employed by the organization, as well as looking at things that you've had to do as a result of COVID-19 to do your operations differently. So again, if you need that air purification system in order to move forward with your programming, then that's something that, yes, would be eligible for reimbursement. If you need additional PPE equipment and you don't have any source of fundings in order to bring that into your organization, you'd be able to apply for funding of what you either have already spent or what you plan to spend in the future. Let me bring up also that this, again, is not a typical Akron Community Foundation grant where you have, again, up to 2 years to spend the money. The money has to be expended by December 30th. We cannot stress that enough. So it's not something that you can carry over in the future for future expenses into 2021.
For a theater that lost revenue on shows due to COVID, can they apply for funds lost on those shows?
Again, because of the county's regulation, this is not to make up lost revenue, but this is to make up for expenses that theater may have provided in the interim, of things that they've done to reach out to their constituents, of additional programming that they've had to do as a result of COVID-19. So again, it can't be used for lost revenue. It could only be used for either general operating expense up to 50%, and then the other 50% for direct programming as a result of what you've provided since March 1st to the community.
What about what we consider to fall under health?
Health is really anything that is clinic oriented, say providing services to indigent communities here in our community, underserved communities, mental health programming as a result to maybe having to do things differently because of COVID-19. So if you've had to go to, say, like a telehealth model, if you need reimbursements for equipment that you've purchased because of having to do things differently, then those are things that would be eligible to be covered in health. That's one other thing I was going to bring up and it completely slipped my mind, but I'm sure I'll think of it.
You'll come back. So a little bit more on that. What about if somebody lost revenue due to a funding from either government support or perhaps another support from another foundation?
Again, it may have to be one of those case-by-case basis, but again, we were strictly told that this is not to be made up for lost revenue, either in the arts and culture sector or in the nonprofit sector as well. So again, it's looking to reimburse what you've done since March 1st, 2020 to today, and really that's the cost that we're looking to supplement you on.
Would payments to 1099 artists for specific arts programming fall under the direct services portion and not general operating support?
That's a question that you'd have to send us and we'd have to get a further answer for you. Being not in the arts community, I don't know what the 1099 looks like, or we'd have to get an answer for you.
All right. So just a reminder for our participants, we did disable the chat. However, you can post your questions through the Q&A function, and we'll be either answering them here live, or we will also be answering them as we type them. Brian is in the back typing as well. And anything that you might require additional details, send that email to caresinfo@akroncf.org. We have another one for a food pantry van that uses natural gas. Will we pay for a grant? Will we allow a grant to pay for the repairs of the van?
The intention of these dollars are not to be used for capital purposes. So I would say if that van is required in order for you to do your services, then, and you could justify that as a result of maybe wear and tear on the van in the last 6 to 8 months, that it needs to be repaired, I would say that probably would be eligible. But for you to go out and purchase a new vehicle, or for you to do construction within your building, or to purchase, say, new computers for your office, those are things that are not eligible.
Could you provide more information on the 50-50 breakdown for arts and culture organizations?
Again, it's 50% for general operating. So 50% can be used for general operating, and the other 50% must be used for what you've done in the past 6 to 8 months as it results to direct programming to the people who you serve. So again, if you're a theater and if you've done virtual performances and you've had to pay salaries for those performers, or if you've had to kind of change the way you do business, instead of doing live performances, you do something virtually, those are things that would be considered direct programming to your constituents.
All right, I see one left. Is there a list of what you have to use the grant for?
They are listed in the grant guidelines that are on our ACF website. So look over those. And again, those are pretty generic, but if you have any specific questions, please make sure you reach out to us and we'll be able to answer those specifically. But again, this is intended to give you relief as it relates to salaries for your employees over the past 6 to 8 months and continuing through December 30th, or for rent, for mortgage, for utilities, for insurance. Those are some of the eligible expenses that we are looking to help supplement. And again, our hope is to get this money all out as quickly as possible. So we're hoping that enough organizations apply that we will be able to expend every dollar, and that once you get that grant and once you sign off on that grant agreement, then we'll be able to expedite that check as quickly as possible, getting it in your hands so that you can put it to use.
All right, I think that sums it up. So if you have any closing remarks.
No, we appreciate, again, the county's support in this entire endeavor. We are grateful that they've taken into consideration the needs of our nonprofit community here in Summit County. We at Akron Community Foundation are very proud to partner with the county on this endeavor. And again, this is new to us. I mean, we've been in the grant making business for a long time, but something like this was something that was in collaboration with the county. And I may not have the answers for you today, but if you send us an email, we'll be happy to get those answers for you. So if you have anything, please make sure you reach out to us. And again, special thanks to our partner at Arts Now, who is, I know, broadcasting this as well and been our partner in this throughout the process. And to that Grants Advisory Committee, who's going to review our recommendations for final approval. We thank them for their time, efforts, and knowledge of our community in order to make the best decisions possible. So,
John, can I add something real quick? I'm sorry.
Sure.
Earlier you were talking about where to find the info. Just to give people a little direction, you go to akroncf.org, and under Grant Making and Initiatives, which is a tab at the top, you can find the Summit County Cares Nonprofit Assistance, just to give a more direct place to go for info.
That's perfect. Thanks, Chris. Again, thank you all. We appreciate your time this morning. And if you have anything else further, please make sure you reach out to us. Have a great day, everyone.